Those stutters and stops sometimes just blow my mind. Hey, everybody, good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the Erudition Network. This is the Erudition Network Interactive Black History and Knowledge session. I want to specify that Black History and Knowledge session. This is something that we do every Thursday to promote the teaching of Black history and general knowledge and things you may not have been introduced to, or you may have forgotten, or whatever, as you were going through school. I do this every Thursday. It is a labor of love to do this, to take the time to get on here for an hour or so and discuss history and knowledge with the world and open myself up and my understanding and learning to you in an interactive program where we can you can chat and we can discuss these things and we can go back and forth, and hopefully you will walk away from each session with some kind of knowledge, understanding that you did not have before. We move this program from 5 Mountain Standard Time, 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, to about an hour later. Actually, no, 2 hours later, to 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, so that we could allow more people who were saying that they were not able to connect with us in the live shows the opportunity to do so. And so this is the reason why we changed this program, which had been on for about a good 3 years. It's a long time. To allow for more people to be open to discussion and sharing and whatnot. I hope that all of you have had a great week, had a good holiday as you over this last week. I hope that you just had a good day today. I was busy today. I was running around, didn't really want to be running around today, but I found myself doing that earlier today, which can be tiresome when you're not really expecting to do that. But we are here tonight. Take this time right now, if you will, to share this program on your social media applications, rather that be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be. Share the program, share a snippet of the program, share an invitation to the program so that others may join us as we do these interactives on Thursday evenings. It would be beneficial because it brings in different opinions, thoughts, and people typically have questions that maybe others hadn't thought about, right? So it's always a good thing to share the program and to grow. All right, tonight I had a plan of some things I wanted to talk about. But I always want to open these interactive sessions with questions questions. This is why I like when we get more people to watch the program, because I really like questions, things that you all ask, um, that stirs the mind and allows us to delve further into history and things like that. And so I'm going to ask you to had a weird thing pop up on the screen. Um, Open up for you for any questions that you have. Questions. Um, we do this every show now. It allows me to answer you all early. Um, Sometimes it takes the show in a direction that I wasn't planning for it to be, but um, it's a good thing to have these questions and comments and things of that sort. So, if you have any questions, please drop that with us right now, and we'll do our best to answer it, or I will do my best to answer it. Why am I talking as if I'm multiple people? In this day and age, that could be misconstrued, right? So, um, any questions that you have, feel free. I'll give you a few moments to drop that in there. I know there's slightly a delay. Um, so please feel free to do that. Man, my hair looks crazy on here tonight. It's time for me to get a see all this gray. No questions. Are y'all telling me you have absolutely no question? None. Nothing that you could ask. No historical, scientific, any kind of no question whatsoever. Okay. All right. Well, if we don't have my son, why did the Exumite kingdom adopt Christianity? Well, there's a very what's the word I'm looking for, Sean Anthony? There's a very good reason um why they did it. It really came down to the first off, the Africans were a people who were already monotheistic, right? That's one of the big issues that a lot of times a lot of people ignore. But the other issue is that when the Exumites decided that they were going um, to accept Christianity, it really came down to um, the interaction of the prince um, who interacted with Europeans. I'm trying to do this in a way where I can kind of be a little bit more succinct. Who interacted with some European Christians that he had captured. Right, they had been captured and they were going to be killed, and they were accepted into the kingdom, and they became um, tutors for the prince and taught him uh, Christianity, and thus allowed for the Axumite people to start to accept Christianity. And the reason also that I'm not, if you get my book, you will read about that, and it will cover specifically how that happened, how that came about, um, and how the Exumite people uh, became one of the earlier African societies to accept Christianity and forge relationships with European powers. But that's a great question. I do look like Cornel West with that hair, and that's not necessarily a good thing. because he's old and I ain't that old. No disrespect to Dr. West. I like Dr. West. He's a good guy, very knowledgeable person. Any other questions, people? Any other questions? Shout out to me. Please let me know if I answered that question enough for you. I was trying to be a little bit evasive because I want you to get the book. Maybe I shouldn't be evasive. Maybe I should just tell you the story. Now, get the book. Get the book. Get the book. It will benefit you getting the book. And I promise you, you'll feel better getting it and getting that knowledge. Shout out to you. You got a lot of questions tonight. The Oyo people are not well known. They are well known. I would disagree with that. They are well known. They were a very powerful medieval empire, but I think that they are well known. They're infamous more than famous because of their interaction in the slave trade. In the slave trade, I think that when you look at the Oyo Empire and you see how they actively participated with the Portuguese in capturing and taking Africans into slavery, they get a infamous name in history, and sometimes they are ignored by historians, especially Black historians, because they see it as a slant against our own. But I think that telling the story of the Oyo people is important because initially they did not believe that their participation in the slave trade was bad, right? They saw it as just like African slavery, in which you would get people from wars and from fighting, and you would turn them over. It was not chattel as they saw it, and it wasn't for a very long time that they got to understand how Africans were being treated in the New World, because it started to spill over into the Old World. That's a good question. Why African Americans don't read? That's a heck of a statement. I think they read. I think that the emphasis on reading has been downplayed again. I think that, of course, in slavery time, it was prohibited for you to teach a slave to read. As Frederick Douglass said, his mistress, his master's wife, was instrumental in sparking his desire to read. And then his master told her that you should never teach a slave to read because it would teach them to think independently. And I do believe that there is a spirit of that still exists. I will say that I think begrudgingly we make reading into a chore, into a task. We make learning into a task. And when you make something a task, nobody wants to do a task all the time. If it's not seen as something that grows you, like, say, eating food or breathing air or drinking water, you don't see those things as, oh, that's a task, right? But when you look at reading, we've told kids, go read this book for a book report, go do this, go do that. And we push them to learn for a reason, and that, and not just with Blacks, but that with people can push them away from seeing reading as something that is beneficial and see it more as something that is, okay, this is a chore. I don't want to do this. I don't want to read this book. I don't want to take the time. Right. So, and that's something that is unfortunate, because reading is a muscle. And if you don't flex that muscle enough, if you don't use it enough, it will erode. It will go away, and you will not be able to read as efficiently and effectively as you would like to. In history, it seems the soldiers serve more like the police and military defense. Makes one wonder if the police state in the country was always doomed to be deadly and corrupt. So that's a great point. As you look at specifically European um, militaries and defenses and things like that, where you can go look at the gulags and you can go look at how the French, the British, the German, how they treated their prisoners and their people and policing them. Whereas if you were to go look at African tribalism and see that the soldiers and the warriors, or even in the indigenous people over here, how all of that ran into the idea of manhood, how it was more cultural, um, to defend the tribe as opposed to regulating the people within the tribe, right? As opposed to policing your own and beating and killing and murdering those who you say are a part of you. It was more so to keep people out who were not a part of you, who could raid, murder, and kill and destroy um, your people, your family, your culture, your tribe. And so that is a that is, and I don't say it to be speculative. It's something it's proven in history. That is purely a European mentality. It's imperialistic. It's militaristic. You come in with the idea that we're going to rule over our own. You look at the kings and the queens and the dukes and the bishops and the people that they were killing, even within their own royalty and monarchy, the slaying and murdering and cutting off of heads and the maintaining of power and deceptiveness of power. We learn this in our Western civilized history, and you should know this because this is one thing that they definitely teach you. But you do not learn about the tribalness or the kinship or the other ways in which societies ran. Not saying that executions and not saying punishments were not handed down by these tribalistic systems by these people of both indigenous and African and whatever. But the fact is, it was a different mentality. And that is something that's a really good question, Teddy, and something that we need to look at historically. Well, Punic is a off branch of multiple languages. So if Punic is the main language in Carthage, you have to understand that the Carthaginians were in fact Phoenicians, and their ancestors sailed a lot, they traded a lot, they brought in different language, different understanding, and all of that played into this colloquial language, which they call Punic, that communicate with different people, different cultures, and people were able to learn that language pretty quickly. But just like with the American language, right, with our English, it is infused with other languages' influence. So that is a part of that. The colonial powers seem to be losing their various colonies. Why is they okay? Let me finish this. If we look France and the votes happening in Caledonia, why is this happening? Well, here's the thing: colonialism can never last because at some point, right? Colonialism is not us. It is not the idea of bringing in a culture, right, to be an equal partner with your culture, right? What it becomes is one culture reigning over another. We're going to colonize you. In other words, we're going to make you a part of us, not us become a part of you, right? So there's no syncretism here. There's no combining of the two. There is only one idea of this is what we're going to do. And so when you look at the colonial systems, even in current time where there are still countries who play into holding on to others, right? It was bound to not last. It's bound to not last. And then what is going to happen is you're going to have revolts. That's why we still have racism and bigotry and bias in a lot of these countries because they still haven't been treated as people who have a value, who bring a value to the other society. And unfortunately, what it has really pushed is control. Another great question. That's a great question. Why are these colonies, these colonials, you know, the British toward the end of World War II, Winston Churchill particularly, was very angry with the idea that the power of Britain, right, was degrading and that they were losing their colonies, even well after World War II, even throughout much of the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. It started to erode, but a lot of it was based on racism, imperialism, militarism. During the Victorian age, this was a huge thing to rule and rule and rule. And it can be argued that some of the issues of the world wars that happened because of British influence and migration of colonialism throughout the world. People having agreements and having what do they call it? Trustees to be able to help each other and defend each other when they needed to. Well, some of these tombs are submerged by water. I know we saw something the other day, is because they, like, even with the Nubian Valley, right? They went and they submerged the Nubian Valley. What I find interesting now is that as they dig into Northern African culture and they try to look, whatever it is, I've always felt they're looking for something. And all of this digging and digging and digging and digging into the pyramids and everything else to find what people consider to be lost or secret knowledge. They are, now they're going into the Nubian Valley and they're going into areas that have been flooded, which some historians will argue were flooded to hide the significance of Cushites and darker skinned Africans and their input into early Egyptian and Northern African societies. But now they're actually submerging themselves and diving under and speculating where they see tombs to go underwater and get into these tombs to bring out these artifacts. It is pretty crazy when you think about it, because this would have never been a problem had they not tried to submerge the valleys and hide some of these historical places by making them dams and doing different things to try to deter people away from it. Yeah, asked some really good questions tonight. I appreciate it. If that is all of the questions, is it all of the questions? Have y'all completed all of the questions that you wanted to ask? If not, you can keep asking. I just, oh my God, you said you have a Navy question. All right, aircraft carriers obsolete. When I look at battleships, aircraft carriers render them obsolete with the advent of missiles and carriers. Well, I wouldn't think that they're obsolete. As long they may be able to be modified, because I think we're getting out of the era of the physical pilot. You understand what I'm saying? The physical pilot. We no longer need a pilot predominantly in a aircraft. Matter of fact, it may be more maneuverable and more advantageous for us to create a drone or drones that can be flown, that can load on the same artillery and missiles that are just as effective. And not only do we not lose human life, but we also have the ability to switch those drones off, or switch off from one drone to another drone as a pilot who is positioned 1,000 or 10,000 miles away. But or even on that ship. But I think that the idea of an aircraft carrier is still functional, um, as it pertains to having something closer to the target. But I do see that there has to be some modification to it. Battleships are still good. Cruisers and DDGs are still good for what they do, but I don't see us ever really getting rid of an aircraft carrier as a function of uh, what we do. Good question. Well, when you look at that culture, Sean Anthony, um, that culture's idea was to that's what their natural resources were for their area, for the Horn of Africa, um, and going further east. Spices were a huge thing. We know that from the Eastern history and looking at the Chinese and the Japanese, and spices were always very, very um, important, not only in how you prepare food, how you keep food. Spices do a lot to further society. So the Shiva people, that's one of the reasons why spice was a huge thing for them. And it was shipped all the way into Europe, or early Europe, into Greece, Rome, and different things like that. Good question. All right. All right. That's 27 minutes of y'all asking questions. Y'all did good. Let me say something. I posted a post the other day because there's this whole lack of understanding out here. Um, I'm gonna quote something to you, or I'm gonna paraphrase it from Galileo Galilei. Galileo said when God created the universe, he also created the mathematics and the arithmetic behind it. Galileo understood that there was both a spiritual and a scientific side to how we look at things. Not so much as it just appeared, right? But there is technicality and things that are a part of the culture and who we are and what we are. Um, and I think sometimes we're finding people out here who take a little bit, and I'm gonna a dab of wisdom and a whole lot of foolery, because they don't steep themselves in trying to really understand what's going on. You know, Albert Einstein said that he wanted to know um, how God created this world, this universe. He said he wasn't interested in this phenomena, or that phenomenon, that spectrum, or that element. He wanted to understand through the processes, right? The thoughts of God and how he did it, because the rest of it are details. That's a deep statement, right? Because what Einstein's basically trying to tell you is that there are so many things that we take for granted. And we can go and pull up these universal constants. We can go and pick up these things and look at them because they are constant. They are a part of our understanding. They have been proven. They are no longer theory. They are no longer theory, such as gravity, such as friction. We know that these things actually exist. But I think that what we are going, right? And I specifically talk about the interviews with, I see a lot of people. I'm not going to just pick on one person, but we all saw the Terrence Howard interview. There are people who get on Umar Johnson and different ones, different people who get on social media and they make statements. And a lot of the statements that they make are, they may have a little dab of truth in it. And we've lost ourselves by following them down the rabbit hole of foolery. And it's a lot of times because they don't want to learn any further than what they already have. And they've accepted whatever it is that has been said as fact and the only fact that there would be. So the other day I made a post and I asked you all to join us tonight if you believe that the flower of life is open. And I went through this week occasionally asking different people, what is the flower of life? Can anybody define that for me? What is that? Because I've seen a whole lot of stuff on it over the last 2 weeks, and I've not seen one person actually get it correct. What is the flower of life? Anybody? Quick explanation. It ain't got to be too difficult. Anybody? Sean Anthony, you said I haven't the faintest idea. Eric, to answer your question, I think that our nuclear armament is dangerous again. And the fact that we have so many nuclear weapons around that I don't even think most countries keep a good accounting of, and the ability to sell it for other reasons. But getting back to that, flower of life. Well, if you sat around recently, you heard people, Terrence Howard being one of them, talk about this whole flower of life thing. And I'm not going to show it. You feel free to go online and pull up the shape that makes up the universe. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Here's the thing. There's a history behind the flower of life, right? It is a pattern. But there are many patterns in ancient times, right? And the pattern for the flower of life, I heard this individual say, is based on ancient Egyptian, Assyrian, Chinese. But here's the thing. Cultures share designs. Get my book, 101 Questions, and you will note that cultures share, Africa shared into the Mesopotamian, right? Into the Syrians, and even into the Greeks, and into the Romans, into the Carthaginians, into the Numidians, into all of these different cultures. They all shared. Here's where we get it wrong. We could say anything is a sacred geometric pattern. The flower of life has been accepted by a lot of people as being this sacred pattern because it has been found in so many cultures. And there are so many other parts of it. There's the seed of life, the egg of life, the fruit of life, the this, that. Everybody has assigned these spiritual connections to this flower of life loom. I'm going to tell you something tonight that I've actually talked about in the past, right? And one of the things I talked about in the past was fractals. Can anybody tell me what a fractal is? That's in the audience tonight. That's on with us tonight. What is a fractal? Because if you look at the flower of life, you can see a fractal. You, as a human being, are an example of a fractal, right? In other words, there are multiple layers to you. There are multiple layers to you. The Africans understood this when they would braid hair in patterns. A fractal, right, is what you see as a way of communicating code, a way of communicating understanding. It is African math. I'm not going to lie to you about that. Right? It is a design, right? A fractal is a fragmented geometric shape, right? And it can be subdivided, it can be reduced, and you see a copy of the whole in every part of the reduction. It is something that we call self-similarity. If I look at a man, I see a man. But within that man are muscles, are bones, veins, organs. All of those create the whole. They can be divided and cut up and pushed out and separated, but they're still the whole. If you were, the best way to look at a fractal is this. If I were to stop the entire creation of God and stop it where there was no movement, right? You would see that there are so many different levels and parts, subatomic parts and everything and all of that. Don't get caught up in the idea that the flower of life, as he said, has been open. It's always been open. We always understood that there are several different layers. This planet has a core. It's a nucleus, has all of these different things. Atoms have different parts. We can go deep. This is the creation of God. Now, a lazy mind would say that nature constantly renews patterns, right? But it's deeper than that. Nature is built realistically. This is that little small piece of wisdom on pattern. And it grows out of that. Now, if you start adding things to that, if you start looking at one design and think that that is the entirety of nature, then you are lost. You are lost. We are a fractal, right? That is a fractal. Hair, eye, skin, all of these different things that make up Eddie. But that doesn't make Eddie the flower of life. You can't open Eddie and say, now I understand the universe. Right? What you can do is see, oh, that makes sense. We talked about fractals. We talked about these things about math. I try very hard on this program to give you an understanding. Fractal knowledge in Africa is the reason why we have what we have with our computers and everything else. But let's not get it completely lost on the idea that we are unlocking some unknown mystery. Everything in God's creation has its purpose, and you can look at multiple different things and be amazed at the intricacy in how God created it. There are certain things that we've talked about. Maybe we will get into them later. Again, when we talk about deterministic chaos, chaos theory, strange attractors, all that leads us to the butterfly effect. that you all see in movies, and we think that it means I step on a butterfly and the world ends. But that's not really what it is. It's the way that the universe works. It's the intricacies of the universe. It is the ability, it is the power that God has put into the universe, into the entirety of creation. And it goes back to what Einstein said. Everything else is details. It's details. God, that's what we want to know. What is the amazingness of God, of creation? While we're telling everybody that every scientific person is an atheist, doesn't believe in God, and they actually went to find God. Let's not get lost in some of the things that some of these people are saying. I disagree with you, the premise that we can't control gravity. Have you seen? Listen. We can manipulate gravity. We do it all the time with planes, but you cannot eliminate a universal constant. And if you did, the effects would be cataclysmic. The perturbations, right? Perturbations, the things that pull these planets, right, together. If I removed universal elements out of it and broke the ability for these masses to hold on to each other, now we have planets going into each other's orbits. Cataclysm, destruction, no order. These universal elements are universal elements for a reason. They're there for a reason because we need them in order to survive. Right? They're here for a reason. And the non-understanding of it, that's what scares me. Right? There's so much misunderstanding of it that when people get on and say, man, we can remove gravity, and people go, yeah. And we're on the flat earth. Yeah. You can't crack the firmament. Yeah. And I could go on and on and on and on and on. All of these things are foolery. And it also indicates how much we did not fully learn in science. Again, we talked about it earlier, the idea of somebody teaching us something or making learning a chore makes it so we don't learn. We don't learn. We don't know what the formula for acceleration, for friction, for gravity. We heard them. We were taught them. Right? Newtonian laws, Newtonian bases, which are really, we name them after Newton, but the truth of the matter is, right? The truth of the matter is we don't remember them. And it's because we were never taught to equate them to reality. When you can't equate something to reality, to your common day, then you really ain't learning it at a basic. I used to tell guys in the Navy, tell me that like I'm 5 years old. Right? Tell me Newton's first law of motion. Basically, don't regurgitate to me a definition because that's not knowledge. Tell me what it is. And people always go back, well, the object in motion stays in motion, and an object at rest remains at rest unless acted upon, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's great. What does that mean? And then I finally get somebody, well, if I throw a ball at you, right, and that ball is in motion, it's going to stay in motion until one or two things happen. Gravity grabs a hold of it and it brings it to the ground, or it hits you, or you catch it, or you interact with it. Oh, so now what you're telling me is really what that first law of motion means. Not the over technical, right? That, we have planets and all of, I don't need to know all of that. All I need to know is what is the basic of it. And then what generates that? What generates that motion? See, this is another thing that I heard an individual say. There are no straight lines. There is this, not this, this, that. Let me tell you something. There is a such thing called net force. Force and force plus force equals net force. In order for me to do something, right, I have to exert some energy. Force plus force equals a net force. It is that net force, that equation, that Newton, that 1N equals whatever, that's what Newton's talking about. And then you can't get to Newton's first law of motion if you don't understand that there is force that is required for that motion to stop. This individuals on here don't talk to you all about that. This is one of the reasons why I said to myself, we got to do something on Erudition where we start to teach different things. Momentum. Momentum is mass times velocity. That is important in how this world works, how we work. These are facts. These are facts. I asked someone a couple of years ago, when they were coming to work for me, I said, can you give me all of Newton's laws of motion? They're like, well, I could probably name you one or two, but I don't think that they're important. And I was like, well, why don't you think they're important? And he's like, well, just don't really see how it plays into every day. It's scary that we won't face a fact, but how many people, when Terrence Howard was at Oxford, people were laughing at him. He got on Joe Rogan and people are like, yeah, what he's saying, it makes sense. To who? Because you haven't studied, because you don't know. Anything sounds like wisdom. And we laugh. We laugh, but there are mathematicians, so-called mathematicians, and people are like, well, let's look at his theory. People are accepting foolery. And foolery is not what we want to be. It's not where we want to be. You think that Newtonian rules of law and universal understandings and universal facts and universal truths, that these things are not important, but they dictate your everyday life. Your everyday life. You are in motion every day. You stay in motion until what? You either tired, you interact with somebody, you interact with something. If I tell you that Newton's third law of motion is that force acts in pairs, for every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction. Life shows you that. Life shows you that. But we don't. We haven't, what's the word? We haven't taken these things to be a reality to us. They are something that we learn in school and we blow off. We blow off. We say to ourselves, they don't mean anything until you're in a car and you're speeding and you don't understand the idea of friction and gravity, and that you don't get the fact that what is affecting you that keeps you on the planet, keeps you from flying, right? But as you reduce friction, as you reduce the ability to be held to the ground, and you go flying off that curve when you hit a curve, and you don't understand, well, how did that happen? How did these people die? You go jumping off of something because you think, well, they cancel gravity. Good luck. Good luck. We got to be better, and we got to start asking ourselves questions, and we got to start teaching our kids better, because obviously there are people who have gone through school who don't get this stuff, who don't understand. If I asked you the difference between static sliding and rolling friction, what are the differences? We use them every day. People don't know. People don't know. Static friction means that there is no movement. Right now, I'm under static friction, right? There's no motion in it. But I'm adhered to where I am. Sliding friction means that it is a kinetic friction. I'm moving something, but it's hard to move it. What is making it hard to move it? Me to push this couch, push this stone, push this whatever. They're telling you that they can shut down friction and gravity. There's a reason why you need that sliding friction. There's a reason why. Rolling friction. This is something that man figured out when he created the wheel. Okay, it's hard to slide something, but if I put wheels on it, if I have the ability to pull it on a wheel, that's why the wheel is so important in the history of man. I still have friction. It's still hard to pull depending on the weight, but I can move it because I put wheels on it. And with enough force behind it, I can move it. These are simple concepts. And you might ask yourself tonight, well, why am I going into this? I'm going into this because we seem to not understand these concepts. For all of those folks that are out here listening to I hate it, snake oil salesmen and people telling y'all things, man, that you don't really understand. So you tell yourself, yeah, this must be right. This must be right. Some of y'all barely was able to get out of math and science class. Some of your relatives, same way. But you can't argue with the foolery because you don't really quite get it yourself. And that's why we want to do programs like this. That's why I felt that we needed to talk about this a little bit. We need to understand that these are the things that keep us tight. These are the things, these are God's given truths. That man sat there and said that the universe was not expanding because he looked at wave theory, and that if you drop a pebble into the water and the waves go out and they oscillate out, right? Then they start to come back. But what he didn't really understand is Doppler shift. Doppler shift, right? we get this change and perceived frequency of a wave, right? The perceived frequency of a wave is called a Doppler shift. And we can judge, right? We can judge how something goes based on that Doppler shift. When an ambulance or a train or something is coming towards you, you get a higher pitch. The pitch is the same, but when it's near you, right? You hear it higher. It's caused by the change in frequency as it approaches you, as it's hitting your ears, as it's getting next to you. But as it moves further away, the pitch changes. Lower frequency. We look at the Doppler shift of light waves, right? And we determine whether stars and galaxies are moving towards us or from us. The only difference is we look instead of listen. If the star is moving towards us, its light wavelengths are compressed. And as we perceive it slightly, it moves, right? And if it's moving away, as most objects always do, it becomes a little bit more distorted. Some say redder, some say more clouded. That's how we know. But when you don't understand this science, when you don't get it, you believe anything. You believe anything. Y'all quiet. Am I confusing you? You quiet. But I'm tired of this lack of knowledge that we have out here. I'm tired of it. I really feel we got to do better to teach. We got to do better to teach. Because we've moved ourselves, science calls it homeostasis, right? We've moved ourselves out of a balance. We're imbalanced in this society. We got so many things going on, so much lies being put out. It's hard because I'm on social media right now talking to you, but there's so much foolery put out on social media every day that pulls you away from homeostasis, from normalcy, from balance. You're not there. And being allowed to learn, to grow your knowledge, I don't think it's happening in schools. Somebody prove me wrong, because what I'm seeing is craziness. Grown people telling young people to follow foolery because they didn't really get an understanding of something. So they push and undermine any learning that you've had. And as we said earlier tonight, when learning becomes a chore, you ain't learning anyway. I don't want to do this. And if I'm doing it, I'm begrudgingly doing it. What happens when we corrupt the next generation of physicists, mathematicians, and we don't allow them to be free thinkers? We allow them to be obscure, obtuse thinkers who don't question anything. They just follow whatever they think. No facts, no proof. This is scary. This is scary. Man got on here and said that they should go and redo the periodic table. And folks are like, absolutely. And when pressed, because I did press someone and asked, they can't tell you, right, what atomic mass, what atomic number is, and what that does to to neutrons. They can't tell you what isotopes are. They can't even tell you what the elements and the ions. They can't tell you any of this. But they agree with them. And by proxy, others agreed. Everything. Atoms form molecules and compounds. How that happens is known. We can watch it. We got to do better. All right. I'm at an hour. I wanted to get into that part because it was really frustrating me over this last week. I thank all of you all who tuned in, even if you seem to be quiet. Hope none of y'all were lost. What did you say? We are not Magneto. I do not control magnetism. We cannot bring deflect asteroids out of the planet and all of this. I would love for certain things to be available for us to do, but currently right now we can't. And that's a good thing. These universal constants should not be messed with because it would be the destruction of man. It would be the destruction of the universe, the destruction of nature. There are reasons why we can only go so far. I hope you got something. Hey, if you disagree with anything that I said tonight, please feel free to hit me up. Tell me that I'm wrong. We'll debate it, and we'll go over it. I welcome those types of debates. Share the program. Please share the program and get people to watch, ask questions. If you're watching this after the fact, ask questions. Drop stuff in here. I prefer that you ask questions in the open other than sending me a message, but you can always message me on the Erudition Network on Facebook. You can hit us in the messages and responses on YouTube, and I promise you I will answer you and we will get back to you on any question that you have. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. I got things going on this evening, so I have to go, but you all be blessed, and hopefully next week you'll invite a friend or person or somebody to join us on the Erudition Network, and we can grow this interactive steadily and get more people to interact, or give us an idea of something that we can do on the network that we're currently not doing that will benefit our audience. Any of those things will be appreciated, and we would like to hear from you on that. All right, I'm going to get out of here. You all be blessed. Until next time, God willing, I will see you next week. Thank you.